where heavy metal comes from?
What if Troma made a movie about the rock band Gwar? That's basically how to describe this movie, Infernal, written and directed by Eric Mathis. And this is a low-budget, silly horror comedy. Let's talk about the plot. It follows three doofus friends as they manage to get a copy of this legendary record, which is a heavy metal LP that summons the devil. And of course they decide they're going to play this record, summoning the devil and trying to get the devil to do their bidding. Of course this backfires and they end up, two of them end up becoming kind of undead zombies, and they all of them now have to try and beat a devil within a kind of a 13-hour period to do various tasks. Otherwise they will lose their souls. Along the way there's various kind of misadventures, gory fun, silly jokes, and lots of kind of slapstick gross out humour. What will happen? You have to watch the movie and find out. So let us discuss. Okay, this is not going to be a movie for everyone. Let me just say this straight out the bat. If you don't like Troma movies or you've never heard of them, maybe it won't be for you. If you are familiar with Gwar and you're not a fan, this may not be for you. Or if you just don't like gross, silly, slapstick, broad humour, this may not be for you. However, if you do like any of those things, you may want to check it out. So this is a low budget, very kind of imaginative and out there horror comedy with loads of kind of creative style. Once our kind of trio of idiot friends summon the devil, then the fun really starts. And I've got to say, I really enjoyed the guy who plays the devil. He gives it, you know, in this kind of movie, which is obviously a tongue-in-cheek film, but he gives it just the right amount of kind of weird threateningness, but also a kind of like a right sort of sense of humour and kind of out there kind of tendencies to make him quite a memorable kind of version of the devil in this kind of like silly kind of like style of movie that this is. And it's, you know, what they do with him is quite fun, kind of make him look otherworldly by giving him this kind of like huge mouthful of sharp teeth, but he kind of floats along the ground and things like this, but otherwise he kind of looks mostly human and things, and compared to some of the other kind of creatures and stuff that you'll see. I thought he was really good. I could have really quite enjoyed our kind of devil character whenever he was on screen. The guy who plays him, you know, he gets it just the right amount of kind of like silliness and kind of like just, you know, very charismatic on the kind of screen. So that I really enjoyed. There's lots of kind of like practical, gory VFX. I mean, the gore is of the Troma style, so it's not exactly like realistic gore by any kind of stretch. It's not trying to be. It's trying to be a fun, silly, schlocky movie with sort of gross out effects rather than kind of like making you wince in when you see these kind of like painful deaths. It's meant to be like, oh, that's grim, or that's gross, because it's so kind of like silly and out there. Again, think of a Gwar concert if you're familiar. So, you know, if you're a fan of over-the-top kind of like silly gore, lots of kind of like gross out gags, for example, you get one guy who is he's an older guy and his balls are so dangly, they're kind of like dangling out the kind of the bottom of his trousers and things like this. That's the kind of level of humour here, and there's lots of kind of gross out sort of jokes and splatter and sex comedy, lots of fart gags and things like this. So that's the kind of the humour there. Some of it's, you know, again, humour is subjective, and we'll talk about it again in maybe what doesn't work, but there are a few things I did find kind of quite amusing, and, you know, you can kind of enjoy the outlandishness of it all and just the kind of the silliness. If you're a heavy metal fan, this movie is very much has a reverence for kind of like for sort of metal music and the kind of the sort of the culture that kind of goes with it, if that makes sense. There's quite a lot of kind of heavy metal music that kind of plays over this film. So that was all kind of quite good. It's all about that kind of that heavy metal imagery and things, and kind of you know, worshipping the devil, etc. And everyone kind of thinks it's cool and everything until it isn't, until it bites you on the ass, you might say. And you know, our characters are very broad, but they are kind of quite memorable. They are kind of quite distinct in kind of many ways. So you know, there's no sort of like subtle kind of characters in this one. Everyone is very like outlandish and lampoonish, and you know, that's gonna kind of, if that's your kind of thing, then you may well like it. Let's talk about what doesn't work, and we've kind of touched upon it. Humour is very subjective, and humour in this is going to be really down to a matter of taste. Do you like that Troma sense of humour? And you know, if you do, then go check this movie out. It's very sort of like, as they say, lots of fart jokes, lots of gross out humour, lots of kind of quite broad, arguably juvenile kind of sense of humour. If you are liking political satire and stuff like that, this is not this. So yeah, you know, humour's going to be subjective. I thought, you know, it's almost spoof-like in some ways, I guess. I found the buffoonery to be, you know, somewhat grating after a while, I have to say. Once the thing gets started with the kind of the devil, I think it, you know, there's lots of visual stuff to kind of like enjoy. But prior to that, and kind of towards the end of the movie as well, I found it, you know, a little more tiresome. The kind of the jokes didn't quite land for me, I have to say. Again, subjective. I'm going to say that in its defence. It's not going to appeal to everyone. And I found some of the over-the-top sort of silliness of the movie, particularly when it's just our three characters, our three protagonists, less amusing. I mean, like, for example, we've got one of the guys who's clearly considerably older, but they don't address it. He's just got this kind of like punk wig, mohawk, but he's just like a significantly older actor compared to the others, and it's just like, they just don't address it. Things like this. It's, you know, some of it is amusing, but some of it I found maybe a little too broad for me, perhaps a little bit too on this kind of the silly side. The practical VFX are fun. I've seen some of the kind of the behind the scenes shots of what the makeup guy has done. I've got to be honest with you, in a way I was expecting a little more in regards to the kind of the creatures and stuff like that. I think maybe the movie spends a little bit too much time focusing on our trio of protagonists and their like shenanigans. The story is, you know, it's a kind of a silly movie. You know, it's not particularly trying to be anything kind of too serious in regards to plot. It's fairly basic, but it's, you know, it's a, you know, you can follow it. But if you want a more, you know, substantial narrative, then probably want to look elsewhere other than this one. This one's all about that kind of the visual style, the kind of the heavy metal sort of music and attitudes and stuff like that. I think it hits some marks but misses others. Overall, it's kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, and the movie ultimately is going to be very much dependent on your style of sense of humour, and if you like the kind of the gross out, over the top, outlandish nature that this kind of movie has. I can honestly see this people really liking this movie, but relatively a smaller audience perhaps. I think maybe the mainstream might think this is a little bit too, you know, buffoonish to a degree. I was going to say, in a way, I was thinking of Necrostorm, another company that kind of does this kind of stuff, but that's a bit more consistent, I would say, Necrostorm, than this. This was a little more uneven to me, but it was still a fun watch. It's not going to be for everyone. I feel its niche audience will enjoy it. I'll give it a 5 out of 10 because it's going to be very much a movie that I think is going to appeal to some and not a lot of others. Have you seen it? Would you see it based on what I've told you? Please let me know your thoughts, and I look forward to seeing you next time.